On the night of April 1st, 2024, a young woman got dressed for dinner. Her name was Sade Robinson, 19 years old, a student at Milwaukee Area Technical College, studying criminal justice. Focused, disciplined. Her friends say she was excited that evening, not for anything wild or dangerous, just for a casual dinner with someone new. She had plans for the next day. Work, school, life. She even texted her friends, said she'd talk to them later. But Sade never came home. Within hours, her phone stopped responding. Within days, authorities would launch a search. And not long after, a severed human leg would wash up on the rocky edge of Lake Michigan. It would take days to confirm what everyone feared. That leg belonged to Sade Robinson. And it was only the beginning. What started as a missing persons report quickly spiraled into something no one was ready for. A horror that unfolded one brutal piece at a time. Her body dismembered. Her final movements traced in fragments. Her last meal shared with a man almost twice her age, someone she barely knew. The restaurant they were seen in was just 10 minutes from where her leg would be found. The timeline is tight. The details chilling. And the suspect? A man named Maxwell Anderson, a former firefighter. No prior criminal history. But as police dug deeper, what they found in his home turned this case from tragic to unspeakable. Blood, a chainsaw, burnt remains, evidence of a fire intentionally set in his backyard the very night Sade vanished. This wasn't just a date gone wrong. This was planned, calculated, carried out with silence and brutality. But that's not even the most terrifying part. Sade wasn't living recklessly. She wasn't meeting strangers in back alleys or putting herself in obvious danger. She was doing what so many young people do every single day. She met someone for dinner. She trusted the setting. She had no reason to believe this would be her last night alive. That the man sitting across from her at the table had already decided she wasn't going home. This is a story about what can happen in plain sight. About how darkness can wear a normal face. A dinner date. A friendly smile. A home that looked like any other. And somewhere between dessert and death, Sade's fate was sealed. What happened to her is brutal. But what's even more disturbing is how easily it happened. This is not just the story of a murder. This is the story of a girl who had her life stolen by someone hiding in plain sight, and the community left shattered in the aftermath. This is the murder of Sade Robinson. And from the moment you hear how it happened, you'll never look at an ordinary evening the same way again. Sade Robinson was more than a name on a headline. She was a bright, spirited young woman with her whole life in front of her. A student, a daughter, a friend. Just 19 years old, Sade was studying at Milwaukee Area Technical College, chasing her dreams with an energy that made people notice. Her ambition wasn't quiet. She carried it in her voice, in her laughter, in the way she walked into a room like she belonged in every version of the future she imagined for herself. People who knew her say she was strong-willed, compassionate, and full of life, someone who made plans and followed through on them. She loved to take pictures, to post moments of her life, and to share her journey online. But what no one realized was that those snapshots were about to become the last windows into her world. It was April 1st, 2024, a Monday, just like any other spring day in Milwaukee. The kind of day you scroll past on your calendar without thinking twice. But for Sade, it would be her final full day alive. That evening, she posted a photo to her Snapchat story. A plate of food from the Twisted Fisherman Crab Shack, a popular seafood spot. The image looked casual to most people, maybe even unremarkable. But looking back now, it feels chilling. That plate of food, crab legs, corn, potatoes, would become one of the last pieces of evidence in the timeline of her disappearance. She had gone there for a first date, with someone she had only just met. That someone was Maxwell Anderson, a 33-year-old man she had been chatting with, possibly through social media or dating apps. The age gap was glaring. The backgrounds starkly different. And while we don't know every detail of what they talked about in the days before they met, we know this. Something convinced Sade to say yes. Something made her feel safe enough to go. And that night, she went. Surveillance cameras would later confirm that the two of them were indeed together at the restaurant. But what happened after the meal? Where did they go? Did Sade have any hesitation as the evening went on? Or was everything fine until it suddenly wasn't? What we do know is that she never posted again. Her phone went dark. Her voice was never heard from again. And from the moment she walked out of that restaurant, Sade Robinson ceased to exist in the world as she had been. That transition from vibrant young woman to missing person happened quietly, silently, and most devastating of all, without anyone around her realizing it yet. The girl full of life just vanished into the night. When Sade Robinson didn't return home that night, no one knew to be alarmed. Not yet. She was 19. Maybe she was just out late. Maybe her phone died. These are the kinds of assumptions people make when they don't want to imagine the worst. But by the next day, Tuesday, April 2nd, the silence began to feel suffocating. Her family tried reaching her. No answer. No messages. No updates. Her digital presence, which had once buzzed with photos, stories, check-ins, had gone still. Then, late that same day, just 24 hours after she was last seen, police made a grisly discovery that would change everything. A group of utility workers in Cudahy, Wisconsin, a quiet suburb just outside Milwaukee, stumbled across a scene that felt ripped from a nightmare. Near the train tracks off Pennsylvania Avenue, they found what appeared to be a freshly severed human leg, just lying there, in the open, bare, abandoned. Police were called immediately. Investigators cordoned off the area. Forensics rushed to the scene. And as photos of the discovery leaked into local media, the horror began to settle in. The leg belonged to a young woman. Black. The skin tone matched Sade's. But for investigators, identifying someone based on a single limb is a slow and methodical process. They needed DNA. They needed confirmation. But Sade's family, they already knew. Deep down, they knew. This wasn't just a random act of violence. This wasn't a mugging gone wrong. The way the limb was removed, clean, deliberate, it suggested intent. Control. This was methodical. Someone didn't just want Sade dead. Someone wanted her destroyed. And that was only the beginning. Over the next few days, police would uncover more body parts in different areas. A dismembered torso remained scattered in multiple locations. Each discovery more disturbing than the last. Whoever did this didn't panic. They had time. They had purpose. And they were trying to erase her, piece by piece. The scene wasn't just physical. It was psychological. The killer wanted to send a message. To the world. To law enforcement. Or perhaps, chillingly, to no one at all. Maybe this was just what they were. Someone capable of looking a living, breathing human in the eye and deciding they didn't deserve to exist anymore. The dismemberment wasn't just about hiding evidence. It was a performance. A ritual. Something almost too grotesque to speak aloud. And it all began with that leg, left beside the tracks. Not buried, not concealed, left to be found. And with that first horrific discovery, Sade's disappearance was no longer a mystery. It had become a murder investigation. A brutal, calculated, and almost cinematic crime that would haunt Milwaukee and the nation for months to come. With Sade Robinson now officially declared a homicide victim, the tone shifted fast. What began as a missing persons report had evolved into one of the most gruesome murder investigations Wisconsin had ever seen. Local law enforcement quickly handed the case over to Milwaukee's homicide division and partnered with federal authorities. The brutality of the crime, the surgical precision of the dismemberment, it all suggested one thing. Whoever did this wasn't new to violence. Detectives launched a forensic sweep of the area where the leg was first discovered. But they weren't just searching for DNA. They needed tire treads, clothing fibers, blood spatter. Any trace of the monster who had done this. Search teams combed through wooded areas, ravines, and train tunnels. The community watched in horror as more remains were uncovered in multiple places, almost as if the killer was playing a cruel, calculated game of breadcrumb murder. Each new find confirmed their worst fears. This wasn't random. Then came a break. Digital forensics obtained Sade's last known text messages, her social media activity, and GPS data. What they found stunned everyone. On the evening of April 1st, just hours before she vanished, Sade had posted an Instagram story, smiling at a restaurant table. She had been on a date. It wasn't just dinner. There were candles, drinks, laughter. She had tagged the location, Twisted Fisherman Crab Shack. Investigators pulled the security footage. There he was, sitting across from Sade, a man with a sharp jawline, buzzed hair, dressed in a casual shirt, occasionally checking his phone. He appeared calm, charismatic even, but it was what happened after the meal that became the focal point. The camera outside the restaurant caught Sade and the man walking into the parking lot. At exactly 9:32 p.m., she entered his car, a dark SUV. That was the last time she was seen alive. Police quickly traced the vehicle. Within 48 hours, they had a name. Maxwell Anderson, a 33-year-old Navy veteran. No prior criminal record. Clean background. He worked in IT and was well-liked by coworkers. On paper, he was average, harmless. But when detectives brought him in for questioning, his story was full of holes. He admitted to having dinner with Sade. Yes, they met on a dating app. Yes, he dropped her off somewhere nearby, afterward. But when asked exactly where, he hesitated. When asked why her leg was found just a few miles from his apartment, he said nothing. They obtained a search warrant. Inside his residence, detectives found bleach-stained clothing, zip ties, a blood-streaked hammer hidden behind the washer. And beneath his floorboards, human hair strands later matched to Sade. There was no more doubt. What happened inside those four walls is still shrouded in chilling ambiguity. Whether it was premeditated or a date that turned into a nightmare, no one can say for sure. But the blood told its own story. A story of violence, a story of control, and a story of a predator who had disguised himself as a gentleman. The kind you never see coming. And just like that, the man who had smiled across the table from Sade Robinson became the prime suspect in her murder. By the time Maxwell Anderson was in custody, public interest in the case had erupted. News outlets camped outside the Milwaukee Police Department. Social media turned into a firestorm of theories, outrage, and speculation. But even with Maxwell's arrest, the questions weren't over. They were just beginning. Because something about this case didn't add up. For one, how could someone with no prior record suddenly orchestrate something so horrific with such control, such precision? Some believed Maxwell had snapped, that maybe he harbored a deep hatred toward women or had unresolved trauma from his military service. Others weren't buying it. The second man theory quickly gained traction. In the days before her murder, Sade had reportedly been receiving threatening messages from an unknown number. Her roommate even told investigators that Sade once mentioned someone she had blocked on another dating app who wouldn't take no for an answer. The tone of the messages? Possessive, aggressive, almost like the person thought she belonged to them. Was Maxwell working alone, or was he just a final piece in a larger puzzle? Some armchair detectives online speculated about a possible trafficking angle. The way Sade's remains were found, scattered, as if someone wanted to make a statement, reminded some investigators of cartel-style intimidation tactics. But police never found signs pointing to a larger network. Then came the military cleanup theory. Former Navy acquaintances of Maxwell told media outlets that he had specialized training in combat survival and covert field tactics. He knew how to move silently, how to remove forensic evidence, and most importantly, how to dismember. Was this premeditated? Did he lure Sade in for weeks, pretending to be the perfect man, only to plan out every step of her execution? One of the most haunting discoveries was a journal entry found in Maxwell's apartment. Scribbled in a leather notebook, with erratic handwriting and smeared ink, was a line that read, "To erase someone is not to kill the body, it's to scatter them until no one remembers their shape." Psychologists were brought in to examine the note. Their conclusion? Maxwell showed signs of psychopathy, not the frenzied kind often associated with serial killers, but the calculated, emotionless kind. The kind that hides in plain sight. The kind that mimics charm just long enough to lower your guard. Still, some believe the entire story hadn't been told. What about the bleach-stained clothes? Were they from this crime, or others? Had Sade been his first victim, or just the first one to be found? Even now, whispers of other missing women in nearby counties resurface. Cases that went cold. Victims that vanished after casual dates. Their faces eerily resemble Sade. And the question that echoes louder than all: was Maxwell Anderson a monster that finally got caught, or just the surface of something even darker? The case had reached a terrifying turn. Maxwell Anderson was behind bars, but the truth was far from fully uncovered. What followed after his arrest wasn't closure, it was revelation. On May 3rd, investigators returned to his apartment with a second search warrant. This time, they weren't scanning for surface evidence. They were dissecting his space, inch by inch. That's when they found it: a concealed compartment hidden behind drywall in the kitchen. Inside was a duffel bag. What it held would shatter even the most hardened investigators. Inside the bag were printed black and white photos of Sade at her gym, walking down the street, standing at the bus stop. They were taken from a distance, from shadows. She never knew someone was following her, never had a chance to notice. And tucked beside the photos were disturbing trophies: strands of hair, a half-used bottle of her signature perfume, a necklace that matched one she'd worn in a recent Instagram post. Each item was labeled, cataloged by date. This wasn't an impulsive act. It was a planned obsession. One officer later described it as a shrine to control. This was ritualistic, the behavior of someone not just willing to kill, but someone who needed to possess. And just when authorities thought they had seen it all, something else broke the case wide open. DNA recovered from under Sade's fingernails didn't match Maxwell. It didn't even match Sade. Lab results confirmed the presence of an unidentified female's DNA, a new mystery inside an already fractured case. Had someone helped Maxwell, or had someone else try to stop him? Investigators wouldn't comment publicly, but behind closed doors they were scrambling. Every theory suddenly cracked open: accomplice, another victim, something darker. Meanwhile, Maxwell stayed silent. No confession, no answers. Just an eerie calmness as he was walked into the courtroom for his preliminary hearing. He looked emotionless, almost robotic. But inside the courtroom, when Sade's mother took the stand, the silence broke. Her voice shook as she described the moment she identified her daughter, not by her face, but by a small heart-shaped tattoo on her wrist. Her words hung heavy in the air. The pain in her voice was undeniable. For a second, even the courtroom felt like it couldn't breathe. Some in the gallery said Maxwell's expression changed. A twitch, a blink, a muscle tensing. Others say he smiled. But no one could look away, because this wasn't just evidence. This was grief, alive, raw, and unrelenting. The story was no longer about a body in a park or a suspect in handcuffs. It was about how deeply one human being can hurt another, and how little we ever truly know about the monsters we pass every day. And that moment, in that courtroom, is where everything cracked wide open. The case of Sade Robinson remains one of the most disturbing and complex in recent memory. But the question now isn't just what happened. It's what justice looks like when the truth is still buried beneath silence. Maxwell Anderson is currently awaiting trial at the Milwaukee County Jail. He's been charged with first-degree intentional homicide, mutilation of a corpse, and unauthorized concealment of a body. His defense team continues to claim he's being framed, that the evidence is circumstantial, that the real killer is still out there. But the facts are hard to ignore. Prosecutors have presented a timeline, physical evidence, digital tracking data, and now, forensic DNA. Yet, even with that mountain of information, the trial keeps getting delayed. Motions filed, appeals requested, mental health evaluations ordered. Maxwell's silence is strategic. He's playing for time. Meanwhile, a broader conversation has begun across the community. Sade's death has triggered an outpouring of grief and a movement, especially among young black women in Milwaukee. Marches, memorials, Instagram accounts dedicated to her memory. The hashtag Justice for Sade has become a digital rally cry. And in city meetings, residents now question how someone like Maxwell, with no prior convictions but clear warning signs, could get so close to someone like her. The discovery of unidentified DNA under Sade's fingernails still haunts the case. Authorities haven't released further updates on that lead. They haven't said whether the unknown female was an accomplice or another potential victim. That silence has only fueled speculation. Some believe more victims exist. Others think Maxwell, may have never acted alone. And then there's the footage. Surveillance clips, not yet released to the public, are rumored to show a second figure trailing Sade during the night she vanished. Police won't confirm it, but the defense has already hinted at introducing that footage during the trial, casting doubt, feeding confusion, pushing the idea that maybe Maxwell isn't the only monster in the dark. The Robinson family, for their part, just wants peace. Sade's mother has spoken publicly just once since the hearing. In a brief but powerful statement, she said, "No one deserves to die like that, and no mother should ever have to bury their child in pieces." The trial is expected to begin later this year. But until then, Sade's name lives on, in murals across Milwaukee, in scholarship funds started in her honor, in the countless women now more cautious because of what happened to her. Because the hardest truth is this: justice isn't a verdict. It's a long, uncertain road, paved with silence, sorrow, and strength. Sade Robinson was more than the horror that took her. She was a daughter, a dreamer, a bright soul who lit up every room she entered. And yet, she is now remembered in headlines that speak of murder, dismemberment, and fear. That's the tragedy of so many women like her. Their light is only amplified after they've been taken from the world in the most brutal ways imaginable. But if her story ends with silence, we've failed her. We failed every young woman walking alone at night. We failed every friend who didn't catch the red flags in time. We failed every mother who now sleeps with the door cracked open, hoping her daughter makes it home safe. What happened to Sade Robinson can't just be another tragic headline lost in the algorithm. It needs to be remembered. It needs to mean something. If you're watching this right now, you have power. Share her story. Say her name. Demand more from the systems that claim to protect us. Because while the trial hasn't even begun, the verdict is already clear. This was a life stolen, a life silenced, but not forgotten. Sade deserved a future, a love that cherished her, not destroyed her, a night out that ended in laughter, not tragedy. Let this be a reminder that behind every true crime story is a human soul, not just a victim. And may Sade Robinson's soul finally find peace.